Hey everybody. Bending is one of the coolest things we do on the guitar. Let's talk about it today. I used to have so much trouble with it. Bending I sounded like I had drunk ducks falling out of the sky. I don't know why my bend sounded so terrible. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to bend or how to bend. I thought it just all sweetened the notes. So let's talk in some more detail about what it is when you bend a note on the guitar and some good rules of thumb to keep going. So today I want to talk about some bending techniques. It's just some basic ideas of how we bend notes. When you bend a note on the guitar, you're tightening the string, just as if you were tuning it with a tuning peg. So when it goes, even if you pull down or go up, you're tightening the string, which is going to make the note go up. So on certain strings, you just go a little bit, it'll bend. Pull down, same thing. So the further you push it, the higher the note goes. So let's talk about how we can push the note. So with our left hand, I almost always bend with the third finger. It's a really good finger. In fact, you can bend with all the fingers, except I don't recommend bending with the pinky. Now the pinky, I love my pinky. He does so much stuff for me. But bending is not one of them. And I'll show you why. We use the pinky to grab other notes when we're bending with our third finger or second finger. So we want to have that available to us. We don't want to deny us that really cool sound that you often hear like this. I gotta have that sound, man. That's just awesome. So I usually don't recommend the pinky. So let's say we just start with the third finger. If we were bending a note on the 7th fret, there's a couple ideas to keep in mind. First of all, finger on the 7th fret, making sure your note is properly played and intonated and stuff just by holding it. I put my middle finger behind the third finger. It doesn't matter if it's on a fret, it usually ends up being just the one adjacent space behind it, but it really doesn't matter. I think of this like Spider-Man, right? So I'm coming at you, you get that strength, you want that grip between here. So when I have my two fingers down, third finger is for the note, and the middle finger is to help push, or to help resist, I guess, or leverage, kind of see how it is. We want to put our thumb on top of the binding up here, on top of the fretboard so you can see it. Often some of the post-Van Halen world, their thumb goes behind the neck, mine included for a lot of things. But often it goes on top when we want to do Stevie Ray and kind of some of the funk guitar stuff. But also for bending. We want to have this resistance. So when our wrist comes down and pushes our fingers up, our thumb is there to brace it all. Lastly, an idea also about physical part of this is it's not finger push-ups. Your fingers aren't going to be contracting and extending like this. Your hand is kind of hooking underneath it. So watch, if I'm on the 7th fret, I'm not thinking about where I'm going with the bend, but just the idea of pushing the string. You can almost see my hand moving up and down with my wrist. So it's a lot of wrist motion. You have to practice it for a while, but don't think of it as finger push-ups. So now let's talk about the actual important part of bending is the notes. So many people just think you can bend until it sounds cool. And I was one of those people. I would just start bending anything I could get my finger on. I literally try to bend it. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. So here's a way you have to think musically about what you're doing. That's the easiest solution. So the first two types of bends that we encounter as actual note-changing bends is a half step and a full step bend. So if I'm right here on the 7th fret, I'm going to put my third finger, middle finger behind it, thumb on top. The bend on the 7th fret, if I do a half step bend, should sound like it goes to the 8th fret, like this. And when we bend to that note, we should hear the same thing. Let me play it again to get it in our ear. 7th fret to 8th fret. This is a B to a C note. And if I bend to it, it should be the same note, right? B to C. And I'll bend to it. You have to do it by ear, right? So. It's the same thing. So if it works musically, then of course you can bend to it. A reminder that bending is a technique like other guitar techniques like hammer-ons and pull-offs and slides, and they're all part of a legato slur world. They're just helping our notes how they get from one note to another. So we still have to think actual notes. When you bend, you're changing notes. If you don't bend far enough, you're actually doing what they call as a quarter step bend, which to me is like a ornamental enhancement. So if I saw the 7th fret with a little bend arrow, I hate the notation for bending, it really stinks with the arrows, it's very confusing to follow. But yeah, anyways, you get the arrow up with the bend, and it has a quarter step next to it. You're just kind of lifting the note a little bit, putting a little air behind it. You're not actually changing notes. It's almost like on a saxophone, you might overblow and sharpen the note a little bit. So if I had like 7 to 5 with a little quarter step bend, it would sound like this. Here it is again. It's not going to the next note, which is a half step. It's not doing, right? So the quarter step bend is only a small one. It doesn't change the note. Once you get to a half step bend, like we just did, B to C, that's changing the notes. So if I'm in a pentatonic scale, I have, say, the 5th and 8th frets, I can bend into the 8th fret from, say, like a half step below. That's a cool sound to your pentatonic sounds. Pentatonics don't have half steps, but you can add them in if you bend to one of the actual pentatonic notes, like this pinky note. You could do it like... That's really cool. Another thing to mention as I'm sitting here, it's really important to hold the bend up and have control over that. I have so many of my students, they push the bend up and they just let it drop down again. But if you're bending it, just hold it. And just let it sit there. Be comfortable. You'll eventually get comfortable where you can add a little vibrato to it. So you want to be able to hold up your bends. If we had a full step or a whole step in music, that's the same idea. That's 2 frets for us on guitar. So if I had one on the 7th fret, it should now sound like the 9th fret. Here's the 7th to 9th fret played normally. Sounds a little weird coming from the half step, right? But now that whole step, I should bend to it, and it's got to sound the same. So I'm bending to that note. It's a C sharp note now. So that was B to C sharp, which is musically a whole step, also known as a major second. Some people think the interval names. See, it's all the same note. You have to be aware of that. That's why people sound so good. That's why you hear people talking about David Gilmour. Man, he hits one note, he just sends it home, man, because he knows what note it is and how to bend to it. That's very important. So lastly, again, just to confirm, we have half step and whole step bends. Here's the half step. Then a whole step is 2 frets. It's infinite amount of possibility of how you bend and then release. You know, a bend is different. That's just going up to the note. If I come back down, that's called a release. That's another side of bends. You could just do the release. It's called a ghost bend or a pre-bend. I like ghost bend, it sounds a little scarier. If you bend the note first without listening to it, this is the hardest one. Like, how are you supposed to do this? A lot of practice, basically. But you try to use your ear, and then you'll hit a whole step higher. Whoopsie, I went a little sharp there. Right? That's the only way to make the notes drop, unless you get your whammy bar here. But in traditional guitar, the only way we can make notes drop is by pre-bending it and then releasing it. There's a lot of other variations on bends. I can have I'll probably have a number more videos on that, all different varieties and things you can do with bending, because that's so cool. Please comment below. Let me know what kind of bends you're interested in or you've heard about. Unison bends, double stop bends, around the bends, who knows? Let me know in the comments below what you think. Please hit the subscribe button. There'll be a lot of new stuff coming up. Check out leadguitarworkshop.com. Keep playing guitar, rock and roll, and I'll see y'all later.